Dana Abercrombie, the Koalition. Thank you both for speaking to me. We kind of meet Simone and Patrick during, I would say, they're growing apart. So I wanted to know from you, Colby, who do you think she would become if she kept heading straight instead of making that turn?
Ooh, I like your question, Dana. Really good question. Oh, that's a tricky one because can any mom really just go straight? I don't think, even if you do, I feel like there's always a piece of you that you left behind. So, I think she is going to go straight metaphorically. I think that she's going to sort of, if we're lucky enough to continue the show, I think that her focus will be on herself. I think it will be reevaluating the relationship she has with Patrick. Um, Taking sort of, she gave up her 20s, 30s to raising children, raising twins, for God's sakes. So I think she's probably going to take some of that space back for herself, and I don't know exactly what that will look like for their family dynamic, but I think she'll still be present, and it'll be interesting, for her to try to be present and focus on herself as her daughters are like launching into this huge career. So it'll be an interesting dynamic.
Right. Now, for you, Kyle, as Patrick, Patrick is described as an anchor that can be used as negative or positive. But how does Patrick view that terminology?
I think in terms of being like a reliable anchor within the family, I think he would be very proud of that distinction. I think he would be find himself comfortable with that. I think he is a taker carer of her in some ways, and I think he's I mean, both he and Simone have one thing I loved about the real parents and how they were portrayed in the book and in the scripts is they're very responsible, ethical, hardworking people, and they talk to their kids a lot about the value of money, and they don't just give the kids whatever they want. They make them kind of earn it. I took so many parenting notes actually doing this, like back home. I was like bugging my kids, like, what I like that Simone does that I'm going to start doing. And Simone especially is very of the time, like pretty progressive as well. She's like a very modern minded mother as well. She's got a great balance of sort of disciplinarian but smart enough to know that you can't just like tell kids no all the time. You need to have a little bit of empathy with them. So I just took a lot of notes from both of them. And I think the anchor thing, though, to your point a little bit, which is interesting, is that, yeah, it can be something that makes someone complacent within themselves, maybe prevents them from evolving a little bit, especially with a partner. And if one partner, as is the case of this show, is sort of presenting that they want a little bit something different, or they want you to either come along with them, or if you can't come along with them as they change or as they grow, then that's going to be a problem. I am pretty fascinated with that dynamic between Patrick and Simone and how that plays out, and how much Patrick is the type of person that can do that and not lose his sense of self, or if he won't be able to kind of come along with that growth. And it's something I think people find themselves in relationships quite a bit.
Kobe, kind of going back to Simone, what I was wondering is you work as the character works as a counselor, and she's in social work, and so I was wondering, she's other people she's trying to help, but can Simone genuinely help others if she doesn't help herself first?
Dana, you're throwing it down today, and you're 100% right. That'll be an interesting thing. She's newly. I think she was just finishing up her degree at the end of this season, and as she goes on and actually takes patients, yeah, I mean, it could be something that forces her to look at herself, or it could be a way to avoid looking at herself, right? Um, so it'll be interesting to see, but it's so fascinating. I find it like my mother-in-law is a therapist, and it's so interesting like looking at her as a therapist and then like looking at her as like a mother-in-law and going like, wow, you're able to do both those things very separately.
Yeah.
When it comes to like family dynamics, you're just sort of like, oh yeah, like you were just that with me, and then you can see when she like tries to put the other hat on for like the therapy role, and girls kind of discuss that in the first season, which is like, don't look at me like that. Don't treat me like a patient. And you're like, well, okay, sure, you're right, but that's also helpful. But yeah, in terms of her, self discovery, I think that we're all working on ourselves, and I don't know if that will. I don't know if that will make her work with more speed on herself, or if that will cause her to sort of put herself on the back burner again.
So my question is also for both of you: what does Patrick and Simone gain to stay in this relationship?
Mm.
I bet Simone has asked that, and
Yeah.
Patrick hasn't. I think Patrick is probably moving right along without self-examining, probably maybe as much as he should, or might be helpful. Not everyone has that self-examine thing about them, and people have it to different degrees. And but I bet one of the issues, I think, and I've seen this play out in real life, and in my own real life, and certain people that I know, is that when someone is starting to self-examine or examine their life and the other person isn't, that is a hard moment. And especially if the person that's not self-examining is not really inclined to. Sometimes it's cultural. I think I feel like especially white straight men of a certain generation might have gotten complacent. And again, I speak from experience from seeing this in family and friends. Like, I think there was like a white boys club that sort of was like pushing them along in certain ways that they were like, there was no reason for them to sort of question anything about their lives from their perspective. And then when traditionally marginalized groups started saying like, oh, hey, this is my experience, like white men suddenly had to say, oh, wait, I'm supposed to like examine this. I'm supposed to sort of see where I sit in all this and in my own life and in relation to others. And I think the 90s was a big point for that for a lot of reasons. I think there was a lot of cultural movement in the 90s that shook things up and made people think differently. And I think Patrick's a little bit in that. I think the 90s part of this is an important factor in terms of how Patrick will grow or not grow or enlighten and still stay himself. I don't want him to change just to change. I want him to be himself, but can he also grow a little bit, even if it's not necessarily to stay with Simone, but just to sort of evolve as a human being.
Very true. Thank you so much for speaking with me. I genuinely love the show. I hope the couples survive or grow at least apart and become better people. So thank you for speaking.
So much.
Thanks so much.